What's up, guys? Nigel and Dimitri. Stoked to have you guys here. And chat isn't working. Disappointing. Maybe it'll start though. Documentation is a must. And Elixir makes it really easy. It's pretty awesome. It's the end of the week. I feel like it's the beginning of the week because I feel like I went on vacation on Monday and Tuesday. So it's hard to get into the swing of things. I did an awesome canyoneering trip in Zion, and that was a lot of fun. Did Pine Creek one day, and then Mystery Canyon the second day. It was really cool. Really, really cool. Highly recommend if you guys ever get to Utah. Well, I'm going to just turn off the chat box because it's not working, and that's sad. But anyways, today's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to be diving into the documentation section of the Elixir Getting Started guide. And yeah, why don't we just go ahead and jump right in? I need to share my screen, and then I'll pull up Safari here. Make this a little bigger. There we go. And then we're going to go to elixirlang.org. Head over to guides at the top. And then down the left side, we are going to pull up documentation, if I can find it. Writing documentation. There we go. Well, welcome from Kenya. I'm from Utah. Please don't go. I have my limitations. I mean, I have done a cave trip, but I don't climb into caves that are like, if I can't tell that there's a big cavern on the other side of it, my ass is not climbing through there. I think that's one of my greatest fears ever, is getting stuck in a tight space. You always hear about those people that, I don't even know what you call it. I guess it is caving, but they climb in these tiny little holes and then they get stuck and they can't climb out. No, thank you. Not for me. Not for me. I hike, I camp, I rock climb, and I rappel. I think that's my limitations to nature. All right. Let's start. I don't know if we're going to open an IDE. Yeah, we're going to have to, because documentation. Cool. All right. So writing documentation. Elixir treats documentation as a first-class citizen. Documentation must be easy to write and easy to read. In this guide, you will learn how to write documentation in Elixir, covering constructs like module attributes, style practices, and doc tests. This is going to be a good one. I have not even had a chance to glance over this, so we're flying blind today. Markdown. Elixir documentation is written using Markdown. There are plenty of guides on Markdown online. We recommend the one from GitHub as a getting started point. So let's go ahead and look at it. We're not going to dive into Markdown either, but it's worth looking into. Oh yeah, this is nice. Very cool. I'll link this in the description afterwards. What's up, Pigeon? Good to have you here. All right. Whoop, what did I do? Okay. Module attributes. Documentation in Elixir is usually attached to module attributes. Let's see an example. I feel like I should type this out. I don't want to just talk, because talking what we're looking at is kind of boring. So let's see if should we just create a project? Yeah, let's create a project, because then we'll have tests created for us as well. So I'll make this a little bigger. And we'll say mix new docs. Oh wait, I want it on our desktop, CD desktop, if I can type. All right, mix new docs is the name of our project, CD docs, and then we'll open up VS Code. Close the welcome screen, and then we've got our docs.ex file created for us and some tests sitting there for us. So that will be good. Yeah, you can go down some nasty rabbit holes with caves. No, thank you. Cave diving is even scarier. Inline skating, is that not ice skating, that's like rollerblading or roller skating? I did that a few times in like middle school, but I could see it being fun. All right. All right, we got our project created. Module attributes. So let's go ahead and write this out, and let's see. The module attribute is used to add. Okay. So to this. All right, I guess we can kind of go over what we have here for the beginning. So we have the module at module doc attribute, and that's documentation for the entire module. All right. And then on the example here, they also have at module doc, and then they have a since parameter or an option, and you can put in the version that like this module is added in. So if this module is created for our version 1.0, you can put our nice dot or our since option, and now you know when the documentation is generated, or if anyone's looking at this, they know it's been in here since version 1.0. And then we have our at doc attribute here, and this is where you would explain what this function does. So it says hello world, right? So what we could say is we could just say says hello world, or says, it already says hello world. So we'll say says hello world. That's our documentation. And we can also say it returns an Atom OK. We'll do backticks, or not Atom OK, Atom world. All right, and so that's that. So our documentation, it says, actually it should just say says world, huh? Says world, returns world Atom, and then our documentation, it's run in the IX shell, so docs.hello will return the Atom world. So pretty cool. And then we can also do our at doc attribute with our since option, and we can say this function's been here since 1.3.0. All right, pretty cool. Now let's read about everything we just did. So the at module doc attribute is used to add documentation to a module. At doc is used before a function to provide documentation for it. Besides the attributes above, at type doc can also be used to attach documentation to types, defined as part of the type specs, which we will explore later on. Elixir also allows metadata to be attached to documentation by passing the keyword list at doc, by passing a keyword list to doc and friends. Okay, so function arguments. When documenting a function, argument names are inferred by the compiler. For example, we have a function here called size, and it takes a map with a key value size, and then it just returns that value. The compiler will infer this argument as a map. Sometimes the inference will be suboptimal, especially if the function contains multiple clauses with the argument matching on different values each time. You can specify the proper names for documentation by declaring only the function head at any moment before the implementation. So you can say def size and then map with size, and then there you go. So documentation with metadata. I want to go back up. You can specify the proper names of documentation by declaring only the function head. So also, if you remember, when you have default values, you also just declare the function head, right, with the default value. So this is the same kind of thing. I like Elixir tests into documentation. Really cool thing. Yeah, doc tests I think are probably one of the coolest features for sure. Oh yeah, did you guys see my dog moving around? He always likes to go up on my couch and be balls out. He likes to be on his back all the time. Just showing off his goods. So ignore that if you hear him or see him. All right. So documentation metadata. Elixir allows developers to attach arbitrary metadata to the documentation. This is done by passing a keyword list to the relevant attribute, such as module doc, type doc, and doc. A commonly used metadata is the atom since, which we saw above, which we already typed. So we used it right here to document the world function, and then also on our module doc here. All right, since you saw above, another common metadata is deprecated, which emits a warning in the documentation explaining that its usage is discouraged. So I'm sure when you update versions of Phoenix, especially when you update to like 1.7, a lot of things were deprecated. So you probably got this warning in a lot of your code. And when you use dependencies, you'll see this a lot when things are compiling. So you can do the @doc deprecated and then leave a comment and tell them what to use instead. So let's go ahead and add that. So we could create, I don't know, let's say another function that's like def hello world do, and then we'll return an atom hello world like that. And what we can do here is we can use the @doc attribute, and then the options that we can pass in, or I guess what they called it was the metadata. We can pass in deprecated. So that looks like this, deprecated. And then you can do our message. So we can say use, oh wait, we want to deprecate our old function up here, not our new one. So we're going to tell people to use, let's see, we're going to tell people to use docs.hello world arity 0 instead. You okay, dude? Sorry if you guys heard Jack's cough. So there we go. We have our deprecated @. So now if we were using hello in our code base, we would get this warning. Metadata. If you want to also emit a warning, you can use the deprecated attribute. Oh, okay. My bad. See, I got to keep reading, not just jump into functions. So we have to actually use the deprecated attribute if we want this warning. So if we go back into our code and instead of saying just documenting that it's deprecated, which is probably good to have, right? But if we want to admit the warning, we also have to say deprecated with the attribute, and that's followed by the message as well. So there we go. Boom, boom. Now @deprecated will emit our warning message to people using the hello function. All right, back to the code. Metadata can have any key. Documentation tools often use metadata to provide more data to readers and enrich the user experience. Recommendations. When writing, he is living the life. Sometimes I wish I could be my dog and just hang out, play frisbee, go on hikes, do whatever. Recommendations. When writing documentation, keep the first paragraph of the documentation concise and simple, typically one line. Tools like xdoc use the first line to generate a summary. So let's check. Xdoc is really cool to include in your project because it will generate HTML files for you based off all your documentation. And it's really cool. Let's see if they show any examples. Well, anyways, I highly recommend it, and you can easily generate it when you include this dependency, and when it just creates a folder full of HTML, and you can just browse through all your documentation. It's really nice. All right, reference modules by their full name. Markdown uses backticks to quote code. Elixir builds on top of that to automatically generate links when module or function names are referenced. For this reason, always use full module names if you have a module called myapp.hello. always reference it as backtick myapp.hello, backtick, and never just as hello. So when we referenced, let's see, did we reference anything here? So like inside of our, let's see. Sorry guys, distracted myself. All right, so basically always use the full name with the module name when you reference it, and it will automatically link in your documentation, which is cool. So I'm trying to think, what would be a good example? I want to find, let's see, hex docs. What's a good library, guys? The JSON Elixir docs. White mode burns the retinas. All right, so if we, let's see, like right here, version starting at 1.0.14, they backticked and it automatically links to what we're going to. So if we went into some functions, so string to atom is a good example, right? We're going to go to the string module now, and it automatically linked. So that's pretty cool. So that's what that means. Okay. Anyway, reference functions by name and arity if they are local, as in world /1, or by the module name and arity. So by the whole module name and arity. So I'm wondering, should we have, and the answer is probably yes, we should do backticks here. There we go. And I don't know if it matters for the deprecated message, but we'll do it anyways. There we go. Our backticks around the function and module name with the arity. All right, reference a callback by prepending the C colon, so C atom, as in C world arity 1. So if it was a callback, you would just put the C atom in front of it, and then reference the at type by prepending T in front of it. So you would do T colon values arity 0. Start new sections with second level markdown headers. So you would use like the header 2. So H2 is 2 hashtags. First level headers are reserved for module and function names. Good to know. And then place documentation before the first clause of multi-clause functions. Documentation is always per function and arity and not per clause. Use the since key in the documentation metadata to annotate whenever new functions or modules are added to your API. Very cool. So that makes sense. Let's see if we have any questions rolling in. Are you going to invite Steve McCord? Do you mean Chris McCord? But if you meant Chris, I have reached out to him via just like Twitter DMs, but I haven't heard back. I'm assuming he's a pretty busy guy. So hopefully someday we have him on, because that would be an awesome guest to have. Tomorrow, Andreas is coming on. I'm blanking on his last name at the moment, but that's going to be a really good talk. We're going to be diving into live book, which I'm guilty of not using. So I want to, hopefully this will inspire me to start using live book, because it is pretty sweet looking and very helpful for like just running quick code examples and testing things before you implement it into your code base. But yeah, tomorrow's going to be exciting. So 10 a.m. Mountain Standard Time. Andreas is coming on, and it's going to be a lot of fun. Now I forgot what I was doing. Back to the code. Doc test. We recommend that developers include examples in their documentation, often under their own header 2, H2 tag, example heading, to ensure examples do not get out of date. Elixir's test framework XUnit provides a feature called doc tests that allow developers to test the examples in their documentation. Doc tests work by parsing out code samples starting with the IEX syntax from the documentation. You can read more about that at XUnit doctest. So this is good to check out. We can run our example right now, actually. So what we can do here is we have our example here, right? And if we go to our doctests, you're going to see this doctests, and we're importing our module docs. So not only are we going to run this test, we're going to run that example code. So 2 tests are going to run. So if I pull up our terminal here and I just say mix test, it's going to run our tests, and 1 doc test ran and 1 test ran and 0 failures. So that's pretty cool. So we can also see this warning, docs.hello is deprecated. Use docs.hello-world-02 instead. That's pretty cool. I think we just saw our nice warning right in action. Yeah, I agree. Livebook is really powerful, and I've just dropped the ball. So I'm going to learn all about it tomorrow. Andreas is also going to come on. We're going to do a separate live stream where he teaches me Livebook. So that'll be hopefully in the next couple weeks after tomorrow. We'll have to see what his schedule looks like. And I think that'll be fun. So you guys can see how slow I am at learning. And we'll have Andreas teach me. And we'll figure out a good example, some fun project that we can build using it. So I'm looking forward to it. It'll be good. All right. So that is doc tests. That's really cool. I think that's my favorite part. I just think it's an extra test. And not only are you writing a really good example for your documentation, it also runs your code. And I think that's pretty dope. All right, documentation is not equal to code comments. I don't think you would want to write all your code in the doc test, because really all you're doing is you're showing an example of the code and what you expect back. And so you could have a couple examples right in there, but you would still want to have your assert tests and failures and things like this inside your unit tests, because you can still have your failures that you want to expect to be failures, and you can't do that with doc tests. Everything needs to pass properly. So actually, I don't know. I'm just trying to think, if you put in a wrong argument and you get I guess it would pass. But what you want to do is just keep it simple so your documentation is really clean, and you just have the added benefit of running an extra test. And I'm sorry if you guys hear, there's a weed whacker or a leaf blower right outside my door again. Every time I do these live stream is landscaping day. So I would look at doc tests more as bonus tests, and you're making sure you're up to date on what you expect to be returned from your code, the correct response. And then you would use your tests to push the limits, and you could have your failures, your edge cases, and all your extra tests that you want written around your module, if that makes sense. Hey, what's up, AI Combo? All right, so documentation is not equal to code comments. Elixir treats documentation and code comments as different concepts. Documentation is an explicit contract between you and users of your application programming interface, your API, be them third-party developers, coworkers, or your future self. Modules and functions must always be documented if they are part of your API. Code comments are aimed at developers reading the code. They are useful for marking improvements, leaving notes, for example, why you had to resort to a workaround due to a bug in a library, and so forth. They are tied to the source code. You can completely rewrite a function and remove all existing code comments, and it will continue to behave the same, with no change to either its behavior or its documentation. I think that's a good example. I'm glad they wrote that in there. Because private functions cannot be accessed externally, Elixir will warn if a private function has an @doc attribute and will discard its content. However, you can add comments to private functions as with any other piece of code, and we recommend developers to do so whenever they believe it will add relevant information to the readers and maintainers of such code. So you can't add documentation to a private function, but if you need to document it with comments for future maintainers, you can do that. So that's good to know, right? In summary, documentation is a contract with the users of your API who may not necessarily have access to the source code, whereas code comments are for those who interact directly with the source. You can learn and express different guarantees about your software by separating those two concepts. Yeah, couldn't have said it better myself. Hiding internal modules and functions. Besides the modules and functions libraries provide as part of their public interface, libraries may also implement important functionality that is not part of their API. While these modules and functions may be accessed, they are meant to be internal to the library and thus should not have documentation for end users. Conveniently, Elixir allows developers to hide modules and functions from the documentation by setting @doc false to hide particular function or module doc false to hide the whole module. If a module is hidden, you may even document the functions in the module, but the module itself won't be listed in the documentation. So that's cool. So if you do @module doc false, you won't show any module documentation, and then this function won't be listed in the docs. So let's see, if a module is hidden, you may even document the functions in the module, but the module itself won't be listed. So anything inside of this module, these docs won't be listed. It's good to know. And in the case you don't want to hide the whole module, just individual functions, you can hide the function with @doc false the same way, but then everything else in the module will still be documented. However, keep in mind @module doc false or doc false do not make a function private. The function above can still be invoked by myapp.sample.add and then passing in the parameters 1 and 2. Not only that, if myapp.sample is imported, the add function will also be imported into the caller. For those reasons, be cautious when adding @doc false to functions. Instead, use one of these two options. Move the undocumented function to a module with @module doc false, like myapp.hidden, ensuring that functions won't be accidentally exposed or imported. Remember, you can use @module doc false to hide the whole module and still document each function with @doc. Tools will still ignore the module. It's good to know. Start the function name with 1 or 2 underscores. For example, __add __ arity2 functions starting with underscores are automatically treated as hidden. Although you can still be explicit and add @doc false, the compiler does not import the functions with leading underscores, and they hint to anyone reading the code that they're intended for private usage. It's good to know. Code.fetchDocs. Let's click on it. Code.fetchDocs. Module not found. What are we looking at? Fetch docs. Okay, module not found. Returns the docs for the given module to the path to the beam file. When given a module name, it finds its beam code and reads the docs from it. Oh, nice. We should try that. Code fetch. Code fetch. How does this work? Code, maybe it's just fetch docs. Fetch docs. Is that? Oh, I'm not. I'm special, guys. ix-s mix. I do that way too much. Code dot fetch docs, and then if we pass in what is our docs module. All right, cool. So that will return our docs. And so what's the difference between defp and underscore function name? So defp you won't be able to access through the module at all. And using the underscore underscore, you could still implicitly call that function. So for whatever reason, say it needs to be publicly facing for internal use, you would do that. But it will still be ignored for being added to documentation and thereforth. Hey there, mentor. I am here once again to derail your stream again with a question. My day is going great, guys. I've been very efficient in writing a lot of awesome projects for HGA, so it's been a lot of fun. I am fixing React from bugs. Let's see if comments are showing up yet. No, lame. I am fixing React from bugs all the day long. Listening about Elixir is an awesome rest. Yeah, I don't miss writing JavaScript. And I never really dove into React like I have with LiveView, so I can't really share in the pains of React with you, but I was never a fan. What's the difference? Oh, I think I explained the difference. And we can reread. Let's go back up and reread what I was saying. I'm not in the right. There we go. So let's see. So start the function with 1 or 2 underscores, for example, right? So functions starting with an underscore are automatically treated as hidden. Although you can still be explicit and add at doc false, the compiler does not import the functions with leading underscores. They hint to anyone reading the code of their intended private use. Okay, so it's the same thing. So it's the same thing as, so you wouldn't want to document it, and it's going to be treated as a hidden function anyways. So defp and underscores are doing the same thing for you. Your documentation will be ignored even if you have it, and there you go. I know, isn't that the unfortunate truth? And that is I think that's the biggest issue right now is you can't find, you can find, but it's harder to find a good job in Elixir right now, right? But they do exist, and I'm trying to do my part, and everything that HGA builds is Elixir. So hopefully, something that I build can trickle down in the future and hire more Elixir devs, right? All right, so code fetch. Elixir stores documentations inside predefined chunks in the bytecode. Documentation is not loaded into memory when modules are loaded. Instead, it can be read from the bytecode in disk using the code fetch docs arity1 function. The downside is that modules defined in memory, like the ones defined in IEX, cannot have their documentation accessed as they do not write their bytecode to disk. Okay. That makes sense. So we returned our documentation from our docs.ex file here. And if you look through, let's see, documentation for docs, you can see that this module has been here since 1.0. And then you can see we have a function here called hello. And it returns, here's our function. It says world and returns Atom world. And then you see our example here. And then you can also see it was deprecated, and we should be using hello world arity 0 instead. And that function was created in 1.3. So that's pretty cool. And then you can use things like xdoc to generate nice readable code. Like all of the hex docs are xdoc, I believe. I'm like 99.9% sure. But so yeah, so what you see here is generated with xdoc. So if you document your code well enough, you can have pretty things like this. And it would be probably more like the module piece and like your data type here. So you could have your examples. That's not a good example. Let's find something else. X unit, like so functions, where are modules? Dot case dot X, where's X unit? Since that's one. X unit, X unit as a whole, here we go. So you can see that X unit, unit testing framework and Elixir, this is a app module documentation. And then they throw an example in the module doc itself. And you can just go down, and then every single type here has its documentation. So it's pretty cool. I'm trying to think of a good way to see. Let's see, GitHub, Elixir Lang. Yeah, okay. Not Xdoc. Let's Elixir. We're just going to open a random file here. I don't know where I'm going, but we'll see what happens. Calendar, date.ex. All right, so if you want to see good examples, this is what I will always do, right? If you're not really sure what documentation can look like, we can now, so pull up their code on GitHub, right? And let's see, where am I? I'm in calendar date on Elixir. Let's go ahead and say Elixir hex docs. So Elixir, and whoops, I'm out of control with clicking. All right, so if we find, where was I? Calendar date. Calendar. Why am I struggling? Types, date. All right, so why am I scrolling? So we have calendar, date, and then let's see here. We want to find the date module. Whoops, man, I'm struggling. Elixir, calendar, date module, docs. All right, here we go. Date, a date, and functions, a date struct and functions. Is that? Yeah. All right. So what I'll usually do if I want to write pretty documentation and I'm not quite sure how it was written, like you can look through this and it's amazing, right? You have great examples, all of this stuff, and then you have your summary with your functions. So what I'll do is I'll pull up the GitHub page and you can see how they wrote it. So they write, their simple sentence, a date struct and functions, and then they'll go into, let's see, the date struct contains the fields year, month, day, and calendar. New dates can be built with the new arity3 function or using the sigil D. So C sigil D, and we just went over the sigil stuff, right? And then you see the IEX example right here, and you can see how that looks right here. So there you go. It just kind of looks kind of pretty already. So you can see how all of this is written, and this is a good way to copy and write your module docs the same way. And you can just go through this, and then you can also see like the range function here. You can see that they run an example, they run multiple examples, and so you can do all this good stuff. And then you see that they have their doc since 1.5, they have their spec, the range, and it's really good practice to look at really well written code and documentation, and then try to copy that in your personal projects. So that is my little tip for you, is copy what's out there, and it's pretty easy. Ta-da. So that is writing documentation section. And I think, yeah, that we finished it. And let's see, next week, where are we? Optional syntax sheet will be next Tuesday's live stream. So that'll be really good. This was a lot of fun. Thank you for everyone that has joined in. I appreciate it. And I hope you guys have a good weekend. And tomorrow, 10 a.m., Andreas is coming on, and we're going to be discussing Livebook. So make sure you guys are here and hang out with us then. Looking forward to it.
Enjoying the video? Show some love with a like and hit subscribe to stay updated. To support me and keep the content free, click join for memberships or pick up a course at elixirmentor.com and get free access to my private community. Let's jump back in.
I mean, that's awesome, man. I'm glad that this video helped. I'm just reading Elixir Getting Started guides. And they're well documented. But yeah, it's a nice thing to understand and know how it works. So I'm glad that you were hanging out and it was useful. So thanks a lot, guys. And hopefully I see you guys tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. Have a good one.